Hear ye, hear ye, hear ye. A new voice is rising in Africa, a voice that refuses to beg, a voice that refuses to ride in the passenger seat of someone else's car. For decades, Africa has driven where others wanted it to go. But today, a new generation of leaders and institutions are seizing the wheel. Greetings and welcome. I'm Dr. Chrissy Agawu. Today, we're talking about something bold, new, and potentially historic. The Alliance of Sahel States has officially created the Confederal Bank for Investment and Development, an African investment bank owned and funded by Africans for Africans. This is a huge step, a revolutionary idea, a potential disruption. And you can be sure that external financial institutions, the same ones that baited Africa into political and financial submission with harsh conditions, are sitting up and paying close attention. But this story isn't just about three countries. It's about a continent beginning to question the IMF, the World Bank, and foreign control over its future. Could this be the wave Africa needs, the awakening that sweeps across borders, or will the old patterns of dependency hold it back? Now, let's unpack what sovereignty could really mean for Africa today. If you're enjoying this, don't forget to like, to share, and subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new episode. Since independence, African nations have developed under the shadow of outside financial institutions. The World Bank and the IMF dictate the terms of loans and aid, attaching conditions that stripped away sovereignty. By the 1980s and 1990s, these conditions hardened into structural adjustment programs, currency devaluations, and trade liberalization and subsidy cuts. These were market reforms that often triggered inflation, weakened local industries, and made governments accountable not to their people, but to their creditors. Take Malawi in 2012. The IMF forced a 33% devaluation of the kwacha overnight. Prices for food, fuel, and imports shot up, and ordinary Malawians paid the price. Even when domestic policies worked, they were undermined. Malawi's farm subsidy program reduced poverty and boosted food security, but the donors cut off aid until it was scaled back because it claimed that it was market distortion. Meanwhile, the US and the EU spend hundreds of billions of dollars every year subsidizing their own farmers. It's just sheer hypocrisy. One rule for the West and another for the rest. Now let's fast forward in time. Zambia defaults in 2020 and Ghana takes a $3 billion IMF bailout in 2023. Both are forced to accept cuts and freezes that were dictated from abroad. Across decades, the pattern is unmistakable. Creditor priorities eclipse citizen welfare, keeping nations in chronic dependence. Western reach goes beyond economics. In 2020, say, the World Bank froze $500 million for Tanzania over schooling and political policies. In that moment, finance became leverage and policy was carried out through the purse strings, someone else's purse strings. And the problem is really, really deep. Most of Africa's organizations are not free from interference. Take the African Union, the continent's highest political and decision-making body. It isn't immune. It depends on others for financing. So from peace operations bankrolled at over 80% to donor aid tied to UN voting patterns, migration deals, or even constitutional reforms. Money isn't just tied to aid. It buys influence. It buys votes. And it keeps Africa dependent. That is why Africa-owned institutions like Afreximbank, the new Africa Energy Bank, and now the AES's Confederal Bank matter so deeply. They are not just financial tools, they are declarations of independence. Africa must fund Africa. That brings us to the Sahel, the Alliance for Sahel States, Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger. Formed between 2023 and 2024, they've now taken a bold step forward, launching their own bank, funded not by outsiders, but by themselves. Not a handout, not an external loan. A pooled 500 billion CFA franc, roughly $820 million. Now, this marks the foundation of the Confederal Bank for Investment and Development, and they're trying to do this on their own. The bank begins with energy projects, power plants, transmission lines, renewables to close the continent's supply gap. But that's only the start. The same foundation could expand into transportation, into agriculture, industry, and digital connectivity, laying the ground for genuine, self-sustained development. I mean, just think about it. Let's be clear, though, this isn't just about projects. It's about reclaiming agency from institutions that have dictated Africa's path for decades. No more being belittled, being redirected, or bound in chains of servitude. Those chains are breaking, and in their place comes a new chance to build on African terms for African people. Against this backdrop, the AES's pooled $820 million is more than money. It's Africans financing Africans on African terms. Now, let us imagine if Africa, through its own bank, could unlock the Sahel's solar potential, tap the Niger River's hydropower, and develop natural gas fields, free from Western lenders who block fossil projects but rush to secure African gas for themselves. But risks remain. Building a bank is one thing. Sustaining it is another. These are fragile economies grappling with insurgencies and strained budgets after their ECOWAS exit. External powers will resist. Investors could flee. Citizens may grow restless if expectations outpace delivery. But the bottom line is financial independence is rarely gifted. It must be built, it must be defended, and it must be earned day after day. The AES experiment sits within a larger continental shift. The AU wants its peace fund to end dependence on Brussels. West Africa debates its own currency, the ECO. Afri-Exim Bank has launched the PAPS to settle trade in African currency. The AfCFTA is knitting economies together into a single market, turning 55 fragmented countries with over 1.4 billion people into one giant marketplace. These moves raise a sharper question. Why should Africa's core needs, from trade to security, be underwritten by outsiders? Europe and America would never accept that dependence. They bristle at China's rise, grow uneasy at India's growing independence, and openly worry about BRICS' expansion. So, should Africa's future still hinge on external people? If Africa is to claim true independence, it must break free of these financial and security chains. This is why the AES's Confederal Bank feels more like just another institution. It feels like an awakening, maybe even the spark of an African renaissance, where intra-African finance empowers new possibilities. Imagine power grids lighting up rural villages, railways linking landlocked economies to ports, farms feeding not just farms, but whole regions, industries processing Africa's own raw materials, digital networks connecting over 1 billion people into one marketplace. As former Vice President of Ghana, Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia, put it in his campaign slogan, it is possible. Now, for too long, Africa's resources have fueled the world while leaving its own people in the dark. The AES Bank points to a different path, a future not built on borrowed blueprints, but on Africa's own design, Africa's own funding. The very idea is intoxicating. Yes, I know. Right now, the AES's bank is just a seed, but seeds matter. The African Development Bank started modestly too. The real test is endurance, resisting external pressure, managing internal fragility, and avoiding the lure of easy foreign cash. Sovereignty isn't want. It must be renewed, it must be guarded, and it must be defended again and again and again. If the Sahel succeeds, they won't just power their grids, they'll light a new path for Africa. So, my people, here we are, 3 Sahel nations daring to say a future will not be dictated from Washington or Paris. The bank may look small, but its symbolism is enormous. The question is, will it grow or will it be crushed? Friend, what do you think? Could this be the turning point away from dependency? Or will the old patterns creep back in? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and if you believe Africa should chart its own destiny, hit subscribe, tap the notification bell, and share this episode. Keep following the journey until we meet the next time.